And your intro is coming up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Arbor, Unger, Picker, Plager, Rab, McDonald, Shock, Hall, Chris Moore, Patey, Harvey, Jimmy, Robert, Saberin, Berenson, Thompson, Eggers, Hess, Roberto, Pierre, Plant, Jacques, Plant, Gossip, Merrick, Richard, Bono, Stevenson, Davidson, St. Marseille, McCreary, Leftley, Ecclestone, Huck, Palace, Harry, Talbot, Keenan, Sandy, Yassi. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
Hello and welcome to Blue Notes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we're talking about St. Louis. We are your home for St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, joined as always by my running mate, the man called Wags. How's it going, bud?
Oh, it's going great. A little disappointed about the hockey game I had earlier today.
Yeah.
But, you win some, you lose some. Unfortunately, we lost today, but we get back on the horse next week and try and win another one.
And at least you didn't get injured this time, which is good.
Let's keep knocking on wood on that one.
That's right. Got to wrap you up in bubble wrap, before each game because you are a delicate soul.
Oh, wow. Laying it on thick, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. I shouldn't try to make you laugh too much because don't you still have a bum rib?
It's getting better, actually.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, it's much, much better. I mean, there's still a little bit of residual pain, but for the most part, it's all good. I feel much better, and now I just hope that I don't, aggravate it or like you said, injure something else.
Well, I retract the delicate statement because that was spoken like a true hockey player right there. Just rub some ice shavings on it, numb the pain a little bit, and just get back out there. I love it.
That's all you got to do. That's why hockey players are the best in the world. Exactly,
and that's why we cover the game of hockey here. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the love that we've gotten over the Tom Calhoun episode that we had this past Thursday. We got a chance to chat with the longtime Blues public address announcer. 33 years, over 1,500 games, and hasn't missed one. Has not missed one at all. I didn't know that until we talked to him, and there's a guy that deserves an Iron Man award. It's Tom Calhoun.
Oh, no doubt. And I was the same way. I thought he had missed at least a couple for, like kids' graduations or something like that, but has not missed a game in his entire career. And I wish I had a job that I could go to every single day and not want to miss a game and have that ability to, dictate how things go. And that's the greatest thing about it. And we talked to him about that is, the public address announcers have a way of shaping how the audience and the crowd reacts. And he does that so well.
Yeah, exactly. With the enthusiasm as well as professionalism, it's always a balance with public address announcers. You know, you don't want to be too much of a homer, and you want to stay informative, and it's a bit of an art, you know. So and Tom is at the top of his art here when it comes to St. Louis sports, that's for sure. And one of his toughest duties, by the way, you know, of course, he does hockey public address announcing, which, having experienced that myself in McKendree last season, I know that when you get a lot of Europeans into a roster, pronunciation can be a challenge. Let's just say that. And Tom Calhoun, when you're doing over 1,500 games, I'm sure he's had some doozies over his time. But the one that we talked about exclusively with him, we talked a little bit about a certain Chicago Blackhawks player before we got to this particular segment that we're going to play here. But you ever notice how the rest of the league wags has trouble with the name Pietrangelo?
Just a little bit, yeah. And it's always different. It's never like the same kind of connotation. It is always different, no matter who it is. And good luck, Vegas.
And as a point he's going to make here, the people that mispronounce Pietrangelo insist that they are pronouncing it right. And let's go ahead and have Tom explain the challenges of correcting at least one national broadcaster of certain infamy of how to pronounce the name Pietrangelo.
Is it Pietrangelo or is it something completely different? Because we know how you call it. Why do they keep messing it up?
Well, I'd like to know the answer to that question myself. I will say this, that if you ask Alex Pietrangelo how he pronounces his name, he will tell you it's Alex Pietrangelo. It's not Peter Angelo, it's not Petra Angelo, or any other kind of bastardization of the name. It is Alex Pietrangelo. Chris Kerber and I have had this conversation, I don't know how many times, about people screwing up his name. Well, obviously the people in Las Vegas are now going to have a chance to do that. So, but you know, there's a couple of things going on there. I think there was a guy in the league a long time ago, and I think it's actually Alex Pietrangelo's uncle, who was playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he pronounced. I'm sorry.
I think it was a goaltender, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a goaltender, and I think he, for whatever reason, allowed people to pronounce his name Pietrangelo.
Yep.
And so that's how a lot of people, especially old timers, remember how that name is supposed to be pronounced. When he came on board with the Blues, I think Doug Armstrong and I think some of the other people in the organization who've been around for a while remembered maybe that, and somehow it became Pietrangelo. And if you probably interview Doug Armstrong today, I think that's how he would say the name. But, you know, the other thing was that somehow the color guy on NBC.
McGuire?
Al McGuire, isn't it? Yeah, your name wouldn't come to me for a second. Somehow he got it in his head that it should be Pietrangelo. And Mike Caruso, our wonderful PA or public relations guy with the Blues, actually challenged McGuire on that during the playoffs last year, during the Stanley Cup run. Went up to him after a game and said, "Mr. McGuire, why are you pronouncing Alex Pietrangelo's name Pietrangelo? It's not that." And McGuire very self-confidently said, "Well, I've known this guy since he was a little boy, and I know the family, and he pronounces it Alex Pietrangelo." Or at least this is the story I was told of how that conversation went. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I'm telling the story anyway. And Mike said, "Well, you can believe that if you want, but if you ask him how he pronounces his name, he'll tell you it's Alex Pietrangelo." And not long after that, Mr. McGuire acquiesced and started calling him Alex Pietrangelo on the air. So that's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, that there was a portion of the hockey community who, no matter what you told them, were going to mispronounce it when it came time.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those guys, Wags, that yelled at my TV whenever McGuire or another national broadcaster would say Pietrangelo. Technically, and as Tom Calhoun said, technically, you know, they're not wrong because his uncle, that's how he said his name. But and I would love to know what the generational gap was that forced the change into Pietrangelo from Pietrangelo. That's going to be one of like hockey's unsolved mysteries.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, the thing that really gets me though is these players are accessible. You know, Tom Calhoun and Chris Kerber and all these guys, they talk to Alex Pietrangelo. They ask Alex Pietrangelo, how do you say your name? So it's not like these players are closely guarded secrets and they're saying, I'm not going to tell you how to say my name. You say it how you want, but I'm not going to tell you. You could ask them and say, hey, this is how I say my name. I'm the same way. My name is Wagon Connect. So I get it. I get why Pietrangelo is like that, but I also get why he doesn't correct anybody anymore, because at this point in my life, I'm the same way. If somebody messes it up, it's like, okay, I know my last name. They screwed it up. Oh, well, I'm good enough for me. So maybe that's why Petro hasn't really corrected anybody from here on out. But tell you what, I don't understand the lack of professionalism when it comes to trying to get a player's name right when it comes to national media.
I don't either. And I don't understand. I mean, there are, some broadcasters locally, as well as nationally that just refuse to go to a coach before the game, or like even go to like, say like they're in an opposing team's, stadium, they can go up to the PA guy. Yeah. And ask him. I mean, I've had to do that many times for an opposing team that may not be familiar with how the home team's player is coach. It's just as simple as saying hello, so and just striking up a conversation. I mean, it's, I know we're all on our phones these days, looking up YouTube videos on how to do everything now. I mean, everyone's a master chef now because of YouTube. Like, have you noticed that? Like you go to like a relative's house, and they'll cook this like amazing casserole that you've never ever seen them cook in their life. I mean, the most basic. They can make like a very basic green bean casserole. Just, we've all had it. It is simple as can be. And then the next time you go over, you have like 5 different cheeses in the casserole. You got, bread, crumbs in it, and just it looks very special. And you ask them, "Oh, hey, was this like a family recipe?" "Oh no, I got it from YouTube." And it's just kind of like, oh, okay, but just kind of down. But anyway. Back to the original point. It's so simple just to ask someone, for a pronunciation. It's like, and you want to talk about deep secrets, asking a player how to say his name isn't some sort of deep secret, as you said. My real last name is Willenbring, and I use Franklin because I realize my name is it might be hard for people to, grasp the first time I say it, so it's like, whenever you're broadcasting, Franklin sounds a lot easier than Willenbring. So there you go. You're in the struggle, you know what that's like. So
yeah, that's why I go by Wags, because
exactly.
It's simple and it's short, and I kind of think it's memorable too. I mean, I've seen other people use that terminology before, but for me, it makes sense, and I think it fits for me.
Just like the old Leonard Skinner song, "We're simple kind of men."
That we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Gotta throw in some Skinner in there. Rock and roll, baby. But yeah, Tom Calhoun, that was from his part 2 of our chat with him, coming up this Thursday. So that's just one part of it as well. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts from. Check that out for sure. If you're watching live, just look us up on Google and just look for Blue Notes Podcast. You'll find us. Look us up. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. We're on Google. All those various places, along with the rest of our Hockey Podcast Network brethren. Speaking of which, we have a couple of new shows on the Hockey Podcast Network. And in a normal year, 2 shows that would represent 2 Blues rivals. So we have a new Nashville Predators host. The show is called Catfish on Ice because it's Nashville and that they don't know any better. Hosted by fan-sided contributor Chad Minton. And Tell It Avs It is our new Colorado Avalanche show hosted by fan-sided contributor Griffin Youngs. Now, you notice a theme there. fan-sided, invading the Hockey Podcast Network. Well, we might have something a little more to announce on that front very soon. They've now also a third show that just started in this past month. They've been on with us for a couple of weeks, but we also wanted to, while we're spreading the Central Division love around, give a shout out to our new Dallas host, the 2 Stars 1 Cup, not to be confused with the Blues podcast 2 Guys 1 Cup. Shout out to them as well, by the way. 2 Stars is hosted by Shippy and former NHLer Craig Ludwig. I remember Craig. He had a really nice, really like noticeable mustache.
Oh, very, very pronounced.
Yeah. He's also a very funny character as well. So check that out. So we have 3 new Central Division shows on the Hockey Podcast Network. I guess the old host just couldn't stand the heat of the regular season Western Conference champion St. Louis Blues. No, unlike the Preds, we will not hang a banner for that. So sorry. But welcome to our new shows. And of course, we're in the works of getting some more new shows, always on the Hockey Podcast Network. Check those out. But of course, this is not a normal year. So at least 2 of those teams, it's looking like, will not be in the Blues division this year. The league wants to send the St. Louis Blues out west. And you know what that means, Wags?
No.
9 p.m. weeknight starts. Woo! Yeah! Look, sleep is overrated, Wags. I mean, if it's on the whiteboard, it must be true.
Of course, it's on the whiteboard and it's on the internet. So that's like a double whammy. That's a double lock right there. It has to be true that sleep is overrated.
I guess. I mean, whenever the Blues and the Canucks, had their playoffs, even when the Blues were home, the home team, quote unquote, they had a lot of 9 p.m. starts, during that series. And if you were around for Blue Notes during that period, you felt my venom and anger towards that. Now, of course, I'm a unique case. I'll admit I have to get up at 2:00 in the morning to do my job. That's not everyone. So, I mean, I'm a unique case there. And in theory, a 9:00 start should be better for me, but I don't want to live life like a vampire, as Wags we talked about before we started recording here. I'm thinking about all the other fans in St. Louis when it comes to these 9 p.m. starts that will probably be coming during the weeknight here. And, it kind of just makes you wonder, Wags, if the NHL just has it out for St. Louis, or it just St. Louis keeps getting unlucky with these games, Wags.
I mean, I think it's more so unlucky because you look at it logistically, and the Blues are probably one of the closest teams to the rest of those Western, Pacific Division teams. I mean, yes, you got Minnesota that's probably a little bit further west than the Blues, but since we're a little bit closer to Colorado in a sense, it almost makes it look like that, they went with the Blues because geographically they are closer. So the travel is a little bit less. It's still a lot of travel, but it's a little bit less than Minnesota. But still, it just looks like they're screwing over the Blues because they're taking away natural rivalries.
Yeah.
They're putting a lot of these games at times where it's not the normal fans, the everyday fans, the people that will watch Blues games no matter what. It's about the younger generation. It's the kids. It's the ones that aren't going to be able to stay up late to watch these games because they have to get up and go to school the next day. I mean, you're essentially hurting a generation of fans potentially. Granted, it is only for a couple of months, but that could be enough. And when the NHL is a league that I wouldn't say is struggling to build new fans, but has, they're sitting 4th or 5th in the rankings as far as, hierarchy of who watches. You got to do whatever you can to build a new fan base. And by putting these games at 9:00, they run the risk of falling further behind.
Yeah, they've been for most of my life like the number 4 league, in sports. I mean, at one point they could have been number 2 or 3 in the 90s. So it felt like the 90s they were a lot hotter than they were, than they are nowadays. And now MLS is threatening to overtake them. But when I first saw, and we can kind of start going into the history of how these new divisions and all the rumors that have come out about them have transpired. So when talks started, it appeared the Blues would be in the Central Division with Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Florida, Nashville, and Tampa. Minnesota would have to go west. And I will say this for Minnesota. When I first saw that Minnesota would have to go out west, I saw the map of how the Pacific would look with Minnesota with it, and I was like, wow, Minnesota is getting boned here because I mean they're far north. Their closest rival is probably Winnipeg or Chicago, and they're losing Winnipeg because of the Canada border situation. So Minnesota's closest rival in the Pacific would be Colorado. But then but that's all they have within a time zone. I mean, Arizona, they would have to go out to, I think Arizona's mountain, aren't they? Yeah, Arizona's mountain, Vegas is Pacific. It's kind of weird how that line works there. But yeah, so they would only have Arizona and Colorado in the same time zone. Arizona would be still a long ass flight away. Then you got Vegas and then the California team. So that was going to be rough for Minnesota. I empathize with Wild fans there, that's for sure. But as from the Blues standpoint, the Blues would have had, I think their longest trip would have been Florida and Tampa, obviously, which, hey, going to Florida and Tampa in February, it's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And you get to, have the reunion with Pat Maroon in Tampa, and it made a lot of sense. And, I was interested in seeing, Sidney Crosby against the Blues, 4 times this season, I think it would have been. So, hey, I mean, that would have been fun. And I didn't have any issue with that Central Division as it was proposed. I thought it was a little weird that Pittsburgh was being separated from Philadelphia in that proposal, because you're talking about breaking up rivalries. You don't break up Penguins and Flyers.
No.
So I always thought Pittsburgh and Carolina should have been swapped. And it turns out they have, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. And, of course, Blues fans would have had still kept the Hawks and Preds rivalries going. We get to beat up on the Red Wings as revenge for all those years of suffering they put us through in the 90s and 2000s, as we just went over in November.
Don't bring that up again.
I brought it up again. It happened. And in fact, I feel we dedicated at least 2 or 3, at least half of that month to the Red Wings, which I realize is probably going to put me in Blues fan jail for that. I apologize for that. Carter Potts from the Quack Reports, our Anaheim Ducks podcast here on the Hockey Podcast Network, he notes that on the bright side, you get to stomp through California. That is true, which, by the way, he brings up an interesting point there. So California teams suck. Anaheim's bad, San Jose is bad, Los Angeles is bad right now. All 3 are down and really not coming up for air anytime soon. This is a big change from when just a few years ago. Remember how frightening it was for the Blues to go into the state of California because all the California teams seem to have our number? You remember that?
Oh, yeah, totally. And then a couple of years back when they ended up sweeping the California trip, I think it was like the first time they had done that in over 2 decades or something to that nature, that was a huge, huge deal, because at one point, all 3 of those teams were top Stanley Cup contenders. Anaheim had won a cup, LA had won a couple cups, San Jose hadn't won a cup, but they were perennially in the finals, or the Western Conference Finals at least. And then Arizona always played you tough. But yeah, now ever since that sweep of California, it seems like things have really gone downhill for those California teams. And I think the ultimate breaking point was when the Blues broke San Jose the year they won the cup. I mean, they literally broke San Jose.
They did. I mean, I think if we had anyone from the Shark Hungry podcast here, or any Sharks fans watching or listening right now, by the time that series was done between the Blues and Sharks, half of the Sharks were in the infirmary. It felt like. I mean, they were like down to, I think, 3 healthy lines. Like their 4th line was all healthy scratch, AHL type of guys. Carlson was broken. He still is broken. Quite frankly, he'll never. I think that they're gonna just hate that contract in very short order. So all 3 of those teams are down, and that leads us to what we learned on Wednesday from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic. So he tweets out that the Blues would actually be going out west to join Anaheim, Arizona, Colorado, Dallas at the time, Los Angeles, San Jose, and Vegas. Now, of course, West Coast means starting road games 2 hours later, which means F you if you're a Monday through Friday scheduler, a 9 to 5er. It's either time to hit the espresso hard, the following morning, or you just don't get to watch the Blues. And of course, I had a chance to just witness the firestorm after the LeBrun tweet came out. I mean, it was Blues fans were hot about this. They did not like the prospect of starting these games late. And yes, 100 megaton bomb, as a guy Bensing points out. That's actually a good analogy for that. And for me, it kind of doesn't matter for me personally. I mean, 9 o'clock for you, is that the worst thing in the world?
I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not ideal because, like you, I like to try and live a normal life for me, which is, go to work, come home, watch the game at a normal time, and go to bed at a decent time. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay staying up and watching those West Coast games when they go to the West Coast, but there are times where I have to get up, at 4 a.m. for my job as well. So those night befores, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock, right when the puck's dropped. When they had the Vancouver series in the bubble, that's exactly what ended up happening. Is I had to go to bed when they dropped the puck. I'm like, what do I do?
I remember one time we were going to do a live after one of the games, and I stayed up for it. It was like 12:30 in the morning, and I messaged you, Wags, you up? Wags, and then when I realized when responding, I'm like, oh great, you fell asleep. And then I think that's when I dropped my piss and vinegar video about the 9 p.m. starts are bullshit.
Yep.
That's when I dropped that video. It's hard for everyone when you have to wait for hockey 2 hours later in the day. There's very few people I feel this benefits. One person that it does benefit, we'll get to here in just a little bit, and is Aloha Commentary. But as this maelstrom is going on Twitter, I had this image in my mind of Gary Bettman, sitting at his desk in Toronto, signing off on these divisions while having to look Layla Anderson in the eyes while he does this. A little girl who survived a rare and painful disease to support the team she loves, only to be told that she can't watch that team because she needs to be in bed before midnight for school the next day. What a concept! Her and thousands of little young Blues fans that are going to get screwed by this deal. That's what I was thinking at the time, and it made me angry. I mean, I wasn't so much angry for me. I was angry for, as you kind of point out earlier, Wags, the younger generation that are not going to be able to watch their beloved team that they, may have latched onto during the Stanley Cup run. That this is a cool thing now. And now they can't watch because they had to start at 9 o'clock to accommodate the West Coasters. It's not, it wasn't fair. That was my response. And then, of course, I realized that Gary Bettman doesn't have the courage to do that, nor does he need to screw over fans like this. He's made a career out of it. So, that's my thought on that. Carter Potts checking back in. He lives in the Mountain Time Zone, so East Coast time start at 5 p.m. there, and Pacific starts at 8 p.m. So he gets it lucky. So he has nonstop hockey from the moment he gets home at 5 until 11 p.m. At night. And I got a taste of that this year because I work a wacky, weird, stupid, obnoxious, weird schedule. I work basically a 2:30 to 10:30 in the morning. So I had to be at work at 2:30. I'm a guy, I can roll out of bed at 2 and be ready and off to work at 2:30. And then, I leave, 10:30. And when the playoffs rolled around, when we had all those round robin games, I had hockey from 11 a.m. when the game started until 11 p.m. So Carter, I know how it feels, and it's a good feeling. I definitely get that, but so we've had a couple developments since that LeBron tweet and the initial maelstrom, and I guess the maelstrom got Greg Wyshynski's attention from ESPN. So he had a series of 3 tweets. If it wasn't that day, maybe the day after. Actually, I think it was that day. So number 1. Regarding St. Louis being in the NHL Western Division and Minnesota being in the Central, heard the Wild didn't want to travel/play out West versus remaining in the Central. Blues and broadcast partner actually preferred that travel and those start times, so they're seated West. And as Guy pointed out, we live in St. Louis, Wags, which means the Cardinals are the straw that stirs the drink here. Whereas the Blues have always been kind of reduced to, I kind of feel like a cult status, in comparison to the Cardinals, that, kind of the underground, sort of a fan base there. And I I kind of got angry at the Cardinals there when I read that tweet, because it's like, man, we're being dictated by the Cardinals here. And I just like, I'm a hockey guy. I like the Cardinals. I like baseball. Don't get me wrong, but I'm a hockey guy. And I felt this was kind of a slap in the face for me. What did you think?
Oh yeah, totally. And it's not the first time that that's happened. I mean, how many years have the Blues fought the Cardinals when they were on KMOX? And a couple of different times they've, had to move networks. I mean, they moved a couple of different times recently that, including the move to 101 ESPN this year. So, it's always been the Cardinals running things here versus the Blues having any sort of say. But I'll say this, with the lack of things going on as far as the Cardinals are concerned, and if they don't bring back a guy like Yadier Molina, and the fact that the Blues are recent champions, and you start to see the excitement around this team, the winds of change might be shifting in the Blues direction. It's going to take a little while, but this might be a good, and this is another reason why moving to the West would be bad, because you have an opportunity to sway a fan base potentially, and now you're going to have games that people can't listen to.
Yeah, exactly. And the other takeaway here was the thought that the regional sports network, which used to be Fox Sports Midwest, now it's going to be like something like Bally Sports Midwest, which is going to be weird. We can talk about that, as it gets closer to actually happening. But the fact that they were dictating, or at least partially dictating, where the Blues played kind of irked me a little bit as well. But that's kind of related to the Cardinals thing. So that drew a couple more tweets from Wyshynski. The second tweet, kind of interesting, considering the Blues fans didn't seem too happy with the start times for road games, you think. But a couple of sources said Blues RSN preferred it to a slew of Eastern time zone teams in the Central. So that kind of drew some ire. And then he followed it up with yet another tweet. And he kind of walked that back a little bit, I felt. Further clarification, as there's some pushback. You think? My understanding is that Blues communicated to NHL that everyone on their end was on board with desire to move to Western Division, including RSN. RSN didn't push for the move, but was okay with it. So preferred here was a little bit too strong. So yeah, this is what happens when you have Twitter and unconfirmed sources, and sometimes you end up eating your words, Wags.
A little bit. I've done that a couple of times, as I'm sure you may have experienced that as well. It's a free form of get your thoughts out there in a quick moment, and then you look back and you go, "Whoop! I definitely should have thought about that."
Yeah, exactly. It happens to the best of us. Wyshynski is usually great, so I mean that was kind of it wasn't a total faux pas. It was just he had to kind of clarify his statement a little bit, so because his first one was a little inflammatory, you think. And just to give you an idea of how fluid this whole musical chairs game has gone with these teams, which has all transpired within like the last 3 or 4 days, by the way, I should point out. Let's point out to a poll that we posted late last week. I'm going to talk about tweeting errors. So I posted a poll on the Blue Notes Pod Twitter account, which right up there. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook at Blue Notes Pod. Like, subscribe, click the bell, all that fun stuff. We appreciate it. We asked, you can pick one of these divisions. These are the toughest 3 teams in each division. Which one is the best for the Blues? First option was Vegas, Colorado, Dallas. Second option, Tampa, Columbus, Pittsburgh. And the third option, which I kind of threw in there last minute, Canada, please annex St. Louis for the season.
I'd be fine with that.
For more reasons than one, I'd be fine with that too. But anyway, the winner was Tampa, Columbus, Pittsburgh, which seemed to indicate that was the Central Division. Now, I say was the Central Division because I actually didn't realize that in LeBron's tweet, he did swap Pittsburgh and Carolina. So Pittsburgh would not be in that division, as one of our listeners pointed out. I appreciate that. And in second was Canada. The Blues were down with the Canada division, which you want to talk about time zone and start time issues. Ask a Vancouver Canucks fan or a Montreal Canadiens fan how they feel about that. I feel we don't have any right to bitch about that, honestly.
No, not at all. I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about it, is that you're literally taking Eastern teams to the West and Western teams to the East. That's going to be the worst. And that's the thing that sucks about the Canadian divisions, is that you could see some really, really good hockey games, but they're going to be on at times that no one's going to be able to watch them.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be weird. I mean, the networks up there, Sportsnet and TSN, are going to love it because it's going to be all Canada all the time. It's like it is like a Canadian broadcasting network's wet dream come to life, basically. And just think about that. If St. Louis were annexed into Canada, I mean, you think that sometimes America gets a little jingoistic and patriotic. Watch like Hockey Night in Canada. I feel like, if St. Louis was in Canada, I'd be getting yelled at because I haven't talked about good Canadian boys like, Don Cherrywood in his coach's corner every single night. You take a drink every time he says good Canadian boy, you get snockered. I mean, it's crazy. But then, so that option got 32%. Tampa, Columbus, Pittsburgh got 39%. And the last, Vegas, Colorado, Dallas. And that was before it was announced that Dallas might be in the central and Minnesota goes out west, which we established earlier that Minnesota traveling west would be a painful experience. I don't know why Dallas gets the preferential treatment here unless this is Stanley Cup final preferential treatment, because think about this. Minnesota has the Minnesota Twins. We have the St. Louis Cardinals. Dallas has the Texas Rangers. Which one of those three teams plays out west in their division?
Texas.
Exactly. So why is it a big deal for them to go out west? This whole thing has been kind of just, and sometimes it just leaves your head spinning, doesn't it?
Oh, no question, because there's a multiple amount of teams that are switching divisions almost on a daily basis. And I've had friends reach out and say, man, are you pissed that the Blues are in the Western Conference? I go, until this is finalized, I can't really get too up in arms about it, because we know that this is probably not going to be how it turns out until they literally say, this is it. This is the schedule. This is where you're playing. I mean, I could get hot and bothered about it, but until it's official, I can't necessarily just be piling on the NHL. I mean, they're trying to figure out the best way to make this work. It would work a lot better if Seattle was in the league at this point, because
yeah.
But trying to figure out how to cram a Central Division team or two into the Western picture is difficult. The fact that Dallas is potentially getting moved out of that baffles me, because, like you said, the Rangers play in the West in baseball. Dallas is closer to Arizona, Vegas, and Colorado than the Blues and Minnesota. I get the reasoning for why the Blues might be that other team that goes to the West.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Dallas is potentially moving back to the Central, that right there rubs me the wrong way if that is how it ends up being, where Dallas moves into the Central and the Blues and Wild have to go play out in the West.
Well, there is a small silver lining here, as Jeremy Rutherford pointed out in a recent tweet. By the way, Rutherford also noted that this situation is still fluid. So by the time you listen to this episode, the Blues might be playing in the Metro, for all I know. I have no freaking idea anymore. But Rutherford tweeted out regarding the Blues late night games in the Pacific Division. He offers some good perspective here, and that's why, like if you notice when I was making my Layla analogy, I was kind of like not fully into it. It's because I've walked back a little bit. If they can make the following happen, as Rutherford points out. So Rutherford says, if, and a big if, they play 28 road games, which they're talking about a 56-game season, so you play 28 and 28, Blues would play 4 each in Dallas and Minnesota, which are Central Time, which is fine. Great. No problem. And actually, this is depending on whether it's Dallas or Minnesota that stays in the Pacific or not. 4 games in Colorado, which is Mountain. It's 1 hour behind. We're used to, Blues games in Colorado. It's fine.
You can deal with it.
Yeah. And as he notes here with Arizona, you would play 4 games in Arizona, which is Mountain Time. As it stands, like right now, it's Mountain Time. But that changes to Pacific in March because Arizona is weird. They have a weird time zone situation there. Like for the longest time, and I think this is still the case. They just don't do daylight savings there.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Yeah. So
Corey and Richie about that.
That's right. And by the way, they were actually the first team out west, by the way, to welcome us to the 2021 Pacific Division. So shout out to them as well. And we can't hate Arizona too bad because they took out the Predators in the playoffs this year and took the Predators to Ouchville. which is a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. You got to be careful in that hood, Nashville fans. But anyway, Rutherford notes there's a max of 16 Pacific time games, and NHL has discussed some early starts. So what that means is, with no fans allowed at California sporting events at this rate, maybe ever, because they're probably gonna be like the last state that allows fans in the games ever. There's not a big deal for fans to, get to the stadium by the time 6 o'clock their time rolls around. So they could start games at 5 or 6, and that would be, 7 or 8 o'clock for us here in St. Louis. It might be a balance. It might be a way to mitigate these issues that people like me, you, Layla, and all the other Blues fans are having right now with these super late starts. Maybe they give us, if the Blues are, say, in Anaheim against the Ducks, maybe they started at 6 o'clock local time there, 8 o'clock for us. And I think that's reasonable.
Oh, yeah, no question about that. I mean, there's no reason to put those games on at a certain time if fans are having trouble getting to the games after work, because they're not going to be getting to the games after work. And we've talked in the past about how they might be in a sort of, pod structure as far as, playing a couple games over a couple of days, like a playoff series. So maybe you can even do that to where you can play a couple of back-to-backs. So maybe you do one early game and then the next night a later game, and put it to where you've got an 8 o'clock start time for us one night and then a 9 o'clock the next night. Gives some teams rest. You can play back-to-backs, and that's going to be how you're going to be able to fit a 56-game schedule into such a short amount of time either. So there's ways to play around with it to kind of appease all sorts of people while also giving the players ample time to rest while cramming a 56-game season into a short amount of time.
Yeah, because they want to get this done by mid-July, including Stanley Cup. Yep. Keep that in mind. This is going to be Jam City. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with like a potential taxi squad, expanded rosters, that all still has to be ironed out. We'll probably get more details on that, especially if they're trying to get this started on January 13th, which, by the way, as we're recording this, it's December 13th.
1 month.
1 month away, and they need to have training camps, so they're hoping to do that 2 weeks before the start of the season. So tick-tock.
Christmas Day miracle?
Yeah, could be. As Guy points out, though, the loss of Chicago, Nashville, and Detroit will be the bigger issue with the time change. At least that's what he feels like. Wags, you disagree?
I totally disagree. I mean, they're rivalries. I get it. I totally understand that. You don't want to lose the rivalries of Chicago and Nashville, which is growing. But it's one season. It's a shortened season. I had this argument with another friend of mine on my other show, is that it's one season. Okay. We were going to beat up on Chicago at least this year. Detroit, another one of those that we could beat up on. Nashville is another team. I mean, they probably would have been beating up on them all year. And while that would have felt good and would have given us some easy wins, that's not the end all be all for me. I mean, You're going to lose it for 1 year. It's not like this is a permanent change. The Blues aren't going to be in the West forever. It's a way to get the season done. So does that mean, you don't see them? What was it? 3 years ago, we played Chicago 4 of our 5 games in the first month. Did we even notice or realize that we didn't play Chicago but one more time the rest of the year?
We did at the time, during those first 4 games, but then as the season went on, it just kind of became a footnote.
Yeah, it totally did. So, I mean, you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, losing those games this year in a weird season it's going to be the bigger issue. No, it's not going to be the bigger issue, because you're going to get those rivalries back. It's not going to go away. And the rivalries aren't what they used to be anyway. A lot of these things are friendly rivalries now, because teams are, players are switching teams left and right. At one point, Troy Brouwer was an enemy, and then Troy Brouwer became a hero in St. Louis. So the rivalry things are great, and they're great for the fans. And yeah, I want to continue to have those games, but for one season to get a full quote unquote season in, I'm okay with not seeing it. And who knows, maybe we'll see them in the playoffs, and that makes it even sweeter.
I feel the only team that really still tries to make it like an old school rivalry with the Blues is the Predators. And that's because they're still learning how to hockey in Nashville. I mean, our podcast and the Hockey Podcast Network is called Catfish on Ice. I mean, come on, they're still figuring it out.
They stole Detroit's octopus thing. That's where it came from.
Yeah, that's true. And I think some Detroit fans have a grievance with Nashville over that. But I say think because I don't really care what Red Wings fans think anyway. So, and by the way, as Carter points out, with a large amount of people working from home, you can throw on a game while you finish work in regards to the whole starting games on the West Coast at like 5 or 6 local time.
Yeah.
So, and I know Los Angeles, like Los Angelinos, for instance, I know a couple people that live there. Traffic has never been better in Los Angeles for getting around. I mean, I've never been to Los Angeles. I want to someday just to see what all the hubbub's about, kind of. But I've always heard nightmare stories about Los Angeles traffic, and you've seen videos of just like, backups on the freeway. And I've heard from a couple, multiple people that like you can actually move in Los Angeles now. It's kind of neat.
Isn't the skyline a lot clearer too? Like the atmosphere and the ozone layer has actually repaired itself more, and things look clearer in LA as well because the fact that there's less emissions and less people out. I mean, you don't want to say that the pandemic was good in any way, shape, or form because a lot of people have died and there's been a lot of heartache that has gone around it. But there have been pieces that you can look at and go, okay, we see what happens when we don't do this. Maybe we can take some of these good nuggets out of this and push forward and turn this into a bit of a win, hopefully.
Well, I remember that being a local story here in St. Louis as well. Like the first month or so when we were all in lockdown, and I still had to drive to and from work. They hadn't figured out how to have me work from home yet, and the highways are kind of like almost like a post-apocalyptic zombie land kind of a highway where there's like you maybe see a couple cars. But like I remember the local story here was that like after the first month, it was like verified that like the air quality here in St. Louis was a lot better because there wasn't as many cars on the road.
Yeah.
So I don't think Los Angeles is unique in that regard. Well, it turns out not every Blues fan is hating the idea of playing out west more often. As you know, Guy is our Hawaii Blues fan, and he lives in, wait for it, Hawaii.
Oh, wow, I thought you were going to say Alaska.
No, would make his videos that he's done for us rather interesting. I mean, I don't know how I can green screen climbing up Chinaman's hat, but maybe Guy found out a way. And when the Blues play all those West Coast games, now, assuming they don't, as we talked about, bump up those times, Guy's going to have the chance to watch Blues hockey at 5 p.m. his time, which is a lot better than the 3 p.m. that he has to watch Blues games at right now. So he has an opinion, obviously, on this whole, Blues to the Pacific idea, and as you might think, he's in favor of it. And he's going to share it in this week's Aloha Commentary, after we tell you about another hockey podcast network show that almost was in the Blues division once again this year. And then after that, I'm going to talk about another angle to the Blues going to the Pacific here that we might be overlooking here, and that is the competitive balance between the two divisions. We'll talk about that when we come back after this word from the Jackets Debrief.
We've got hockey talk. Those are the moments you're a sports fan for. Those are the moments where, you're down 3-0 and the team has this amazing comeback. And the guy who you really are thinking this needs to be the star of this team has a hat trick. We've got beer.
It has a unicorn on the can. An easy drinking beer that's just delicious.
We want to help you understand the sport you love better.
What kind of things are you looking for to understand the game better? Or what's a couple of things someone who's watching the game at home when things start up here in a few weeks, or if they're watching college hockey, what's going on right now? What kind of things would they be looking for to try and understand the game better, or what's happening in the game, that sort of thing?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's something that's evergreen.
Listen to Jackets Debrief, part of the Hockey Podcast Network, and available wherever fine podcasts are downloaded.
And now the argument for the Blues playing in the Pacific.
Aloha! Welcome to Blue Notes Podcast. I'm the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report, and a blog writer for Gateway City Sport. And this is my Aloha Commentary. Man, what a couple of weeks it's been in Blues Nation. First, we had Mount St. Helens erupt with Adidas coming out with the reverse retro jersey of the 90s clown jersey being red. Man, the You either liked it or you hated it. There's almost no in between, even though the poll that Jeremy Rutherford put out said that there was, didn't feel like me. And then, next Wednesday, Pierre LeBrun, I hope I said that right, comes out with this tweet that says the Blues are going to be in the Western Division. Mount Vesuvius blows up. Well, first, let me talk a little bit about the reverse retro jersey. I actually happen to like them, and I do like the red. I like the symbolism, and I wrote an article for Gateway City Sports called Why Blues Fans Are Seeing Red. I hope you'll check it out. Now, that's my side, so I'm going to let pissed off frontal Blues fan tell you his side. Take it away.
Yeah, well, come on. We're the Blues, not the Reds. And yes, I know it was about the music, but it's spelled the same. We're still the Blues, not the Reds. It just drives me crazy.
Okay, I get all that. I like the red. You know, it's urban that stands for St. Louis. I like that. I love the symbolism. I love the blue staff. It's to me, it really connects the team to St. Louis, and that I like. Now let's talk about the extreme blow up of Mount Vesuvius. Pierre LeBrun's tweet about the Blues going to the West. And one of the biggest things that came out about this was that the Blues and her broadcast partners were on board with it. Fox Sports Midwest immediately took a step back and said they had nothing to do with that. I reached out to Scott Warmer from the Blues pregame and postgame show on Fox Sports, and he said that their PR guy told him that they had nothing to do with it, and they don't have that kind of pull. They are one of the most watched regional networks, but they just don't have that much pull. You know, two sides of the story, we don't know, but that's the way that seems. And then there's a couple other things that are negative about it. I also wrote an article about this called Gateway to the Pacific. I really hope you check it out. I'm getting some great reviews on that. Mike Zeisberger from NHL.com told me it was great work. And I appreciate that, Mr. Zeisberger. So, disgruntled Blues fan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, that makes no sense, the Blues being in the West. Minnesota's further west. And then you take away the rivalries with Chicago and Nashville, and then the one we could do again with Detroit, especially beating up on those teams. And then we got to go to the West Coast and play all those late games. And don't walk over me again, damn it. It makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. Somebody's got their head.
Okay. We get it. You don't like being in the West. You know what? You're just too much negativity for me. Bye.
Screw you. I'm out of here.
Okay. So, guys, as you can see, those are the two big topics that you get to talk. Well, you've already talked about the reverse retro to your red in the cheeks. So let's talk about the Blues to the West and, you know, the good things and the bad things about it. And one last thing. Today, the 13th of December, is Vladimir Tarasenko's 29th birthday. So let's all say, happy birthday, Vladimir! Okay, guys, enjoy talking about this. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying aloha, mahalo, and I can't wait to see you on the next Aloha Commentary and Blue Note Fan Report. And please read my blog on Gateway City Sports. Aloha!
Thanks a lot, Guy, for that Aloha Commentary. A unique take this week where he brought on his evil, anti-nemesis, I guess, there.
Yeah, his alter ego there that was not too happy about pretty much anything.
No, I think that guy needs a Xanax or two, or something to calm his nerves down a little bit. He sounded like those Blues fans from Wednesday on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, they were a little bit hot, like you said earlier. I wish people would just, take a chill pill, step back. We're Stanley Cup champions from a couple years ago. Things are going well. Yes, we lost Alex Pietrangelo, but it's okay. Nothing's official yet. Until it's official,
Yeah,
don't
get off
so
the
hot and
Eads
bothered.
Bridge. Don't jump off the Eads Bridge into the Mississippi. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. It will be just fine. And I say that also just because I'm working on an article for Last Word on Hockey, which of course I write for. And before I get to that, by the way, pause for a second here. Getting back to Guy. Guy, as you mentioned, he writes for Gateway City Sports, and he did a very detailed article arguing for the Blues, going out to the Pacific as well. It's on gatewaycitysports.com. Please check that out. He put a lot of time and effort into this. I can just tell. So check that out. He's doing a lot of writing for them now. But anyways, back to what I was going to get to here. I'm writing for a Last Word on Hockey. I'm working on an article, trying to explain which division would work out better competitively for the St. Louis Blues based on the Blues' records against these teams over the past 3 seasons. And I chose the last 3 seasons because that's how long Vegas has been in. So I wanted to kind of keep it somewhat equal. And also, after 4 or 5 years, there's a lot of roster turnovers. So I wanted to kind of keep things apples to apples as much as I could. So looking at the teams in the Pacific and the Central, we'll start off with the Pacific here. In the past 3 seasons, the Blues have a 5-4 record against the Anaheim Ducks and a +5 goal differential. So pretty good. Arizona's given us some issues, as Sporty with Corey and Richie have pointed out to us a couple times in the past. The Blues have 3 wins, 5 losses, and an overtime loss. And they represent the worst goal differential among Pacific teams at a -13. So
they play the same style as the Blues, and that's what we struggle against.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's and of course they got our boy Clayton Keller there, who's looked pretty good against his home team. I think he likes playing against the Blues. I guess it's almost a show off that, hey, you should have taken me in the draft. Anywho, Colorado, now of course, Arizona has been a team that's has its share of ups and downs. They're not a bad team. They're not a good team. They're kind of interesting. It's an interesting situation there. Let's just put it that way. Colorado, we know all about Colorado. Colorado is a strong team. They have, in my opinion, the best center in hockey, Nathan McKinnon. I think McKinnon surpassed McDavid. Jay Fresh has an article going into that, coming out here in the next couple of days. Check that out. Friend of the program, Jay Fresh, by the way. So Colorado, you would think the Blues would have just all sorts of issues against the Avalanche. The Blues are 9-4 against the Avalanche with a +7 goal differential. So Avs are apparently fine. Coyotes are not. Avs are fine. Blues hockey, go figure. Los Angeles, the Blues have a 5-3 record against them in a +11 goal differential. They had a couple blowouts in there. Against the Wild, a few issues. The Blues have a 5-4 record against the Wild and a +4 differential. And finally, San Jose, 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss, +7. And of course, that doesn't include the playoffs where they beat the Sharks to a pulp, in 2019. So, and then Vegas, a team that has not beaten the Blues in regulation. 5 wins, 0 losses, 4 overtime losses. Peculiar. +7 goal differential there. So the Blues can historically have handled Vegas. Overall, their record against these specific teams, 37-21 and 6 overtime losses, a +27 goal differential and 80 points. Not bad. And, it's so weird looking at all those, like, the good teams in that division, like Colorado and Vegas and, hell, I'll even throw Minnesota in there and be like, well, the Blues can handle them. But then you look at Arizona. It's like, we have to be scared about Arizona. Isn't that? And they're going to be like our actual Central Division rivals here in the next year, because when Seattle comes in, Arizona comes to the Central. So it's so weird how, you can have bad, middle to bad teams be your bogey team.
There's always one, though. I mean, I think there's always a team that, doesn't play well overall, but for some reason gets hyped to play you. And like I said, style matches what the Blues do. They're a fast, physical team. They play the same sort of game, and that's something that takes the Blues off their game. So it makes sense, and every team has that. Every team has that sort of under the radar nemesis that you're like, man, I don't like playing them. And unfortunately, we're gonna get that, like you said, in the next year. We're gonna have that full time, unfortunately.
Yeah. Great. Welcome, Corey and Richie. Yeah, great. Central Division, there is a team that does give the Blues fits, and it is an actual nemesis of the Blues. We'll get to them here in a little bit. Against Carolina, the Blues have a 4-1 record, a +5 goal differential. No problem there. Chicago, well, they've been our bitch for the past couple of years. We've won 8 games, lost 2, and lost 3 overtime losses. So a +14 goal differential. We scored 50 goals against the Blackhawks in the past 3 seasons. That's a lot.
That's when Corey Crawford's not in net. That'll happen.
Yeah, the Forsberg and Subban and the guys not named Crawford. Even sometimes, even when Corey Crawford was in the net, sometimes we would light him up just because he's not the Crawford of old. Columbus Blue Jackets used to be a rival when the Blue Jackets started in the NHL. That was a nice rivalry until they went east. 4-1 and an overtime loss. So basically 4-2, +3 goal differential. Always a tough game against Columbus. I feel like they're always that's not a team, that is a fun time for the Blues. And I think that comes down to their style.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They're just like Arizona in that sense. And you can look at the record and say, okay, 4-2 is pretty good. But then you look at that +3 goal differential. It just shows you that the games are close. It's not like you're getting blowout wins.
Yeah,
the games are close. They're 1-goal games. They're tough games against Columbus.
Yeah, exactly. It's always a buzzsaw going through Columbus. That's for sure. Dallas, tough opponent for the Blues. I mean, we remember the 2019 playoffs. We've talked about it ad nauseum here, and I still get PTSD over that series. In the regular season, very even as well. The Blues, 7 wins, 5 losses, 2 overtime losses, and just a +2 goal differential against the Stars. And that I feel the Stars-Blues rivalry, it's not, as you kind of said, it's not like a real blood-hate rivalry at all. It's a friendly rivalry. I feel it's a very friendly rivalry because I've gotten along with Stars fans pretty well, but it feels like a competitive rivalry where it's like, you get, these are just 2 teams just going at it, every single time. And they rarely, games between the Blues and Stars, rarely do they let you down.
Oh yeah, not at all. And Dallas fans are, you talk about how Nashville is still trying to learn hockey. Dallas knows hockey.
They do.
They did a great job of, kind of a grassroots campaign. They really brought hockey to the fans and taught them what it meant to be a hockey fan. So yeah, you've got knowledgeable fans. You've got a good ownership group. You've got a great arena. And they've done well with player development and signings to keep that team competitive, and the style is good. The structure is good. And they're another team that, they don't play the Blues style, but they're well run.
Yeah.
And that's something when you see a well-run team, you can appreciate it. And the fact that they're in our division means that means they're a rival, and they've had great games, some great series, and you dread playing them, but you're also like, I kind of look forward to those games too.
Yeah, I went to Blues Dallas 2018 down to American Airlines. Beautiful arena. Fans were very hyped for the whole game. I mean, they knew when to cheer, when to boo. I mean, they were very, as you said, they know what they're doing now in Dallas, and it was a good presentation overall. If you're ever looking to do a road trip for a Blues hockey game, you could do a lot worse than Dallas. Dallas was a good time. Don't go to Nashville. Whatever you do, don't go to Nashville. I went there last year, and that was an experience, to say the least. Detroit, never been. Blues have pretty much had their way with the Red Wings the past few years. 4-1 record, +9. As Red Wings have been down for a while, and they'll probably be down for a while longer. Florida, 2-3 record against Florida, and they're a -5 against the Panthers. Florida's a good team. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but I can't remember a Blues Panthers game because they just aren't memorable, because you're talking about cross conferences, and what's there's no storyline. So it's just kind of like when I see 2 and 3 and a -5 goal differential, I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
That just means the Blues don't get hyped for those games, and there's no reason to get hyped for them because they're not playing in an arena that's full of fans. When they're playing in Florida, it's in Florida. Florida's not a team that has a lot of sexy names on it, although they have some really good players on that team. But it's just one of those games that almost kind of feels like a letdown whenever you play Florida.
Yeah, I was like, I one of the games I went to last season. I think Florida came to St. Louis. It was when the last season or the season before, and I remember it was like in November. So it was like the season was just starting out, and like I remember, I think that was the game that Florida won, and I was just kind of like, so. Moving on. That's really all we can say about Florida, really. Nashville. Now, this is a team. I pick on Nashville a lot because, as I said, they're still learning how to do the whole hockey thing in Nashville, I feel. And yet the Blues have a 4-7-2 overtime loss record against Nashville, and they are at -8 over the years against Nashville. Nashville gives the Blues some issues, and I think just as it was with Arizona, Wags, I think it's just the style of play.
It is. They play an exactly the same style as the Blues, and that stems from back in the Barry Trotz days too. I mean, they were a thorn on our side when Barry Trotz was there, and that's continued throughout the other coaches that they've had. They've had good goaltending, and I think that's the thing that will, I think, bother me the most. That if the Blues don't play in the Central this year, is the fact that they're going to go up against. They would go up against a national team that doesn't have a solid number one goaltender.
Not anymore.
And that's something that they've had a lot in their time. I mean, they had Pekka Rinne, they had Chris Mason, they've had other guys that you look at and you go, okay, that's their starter. He's good. And then the backups have been pretty decent as well. Well, they're going into this season with a huge question mark at the goaltending position. And that was going to be the Blues' opportunity to kind of right the ship against Nashville in a sense during the regular season and the playoffs, because I did not like seeing them in the playoffs a few years ago either.
I'll give Nashville as a team credit over the years because they're remarkably consistent in how they approach the game of hockey. There's 3 hallmarks that I feel that Nashville Predators have over the years. Number 1 is a rock-solid defense, deep and talented. I mean, that's a hallmark of Predators hockey right there. Number 2, a small army of overpaid, overrated centers. They got rid of one this offseason with Kyle Turris, so they're only down to 2. But that's always been a hallmark of them. And number 3 is Scandinavian goaltending, between Pekka Rinne and the man of constant sorrows, Jussi Saros. Now, I think in short, I think they're going to definitely try to push Askarov to the NHL sooner than later. He was their first-round pick this year, supposed to be one of the best goaltending prospects in years. And if they get that position locked down in Nashville, that 4-7 record that might look good, because they're secretly, and don't tell the Nashville podcast this, but Nashville scares me a little bit.
They do me as well. They've always played the Blues tough. They're a physical team. I don't know if they have something, and I've talked about this on my other podcast, that sometimes there's a franchise that has something on you. And it's a nugget in the back of your head. And it doesn't matter if new players come in or new coaches come in or anything like that. There's something within the organization that makes that franchise just something else in your mind. I mean, we talked about it with the Patriots and the Bills. Buffalo, this is their year. They're playing well. Well, New England came into Buffalo, and that game ended up being super ridiculously close without Tom Brady there. And it just goes back to that. Sometimes a franchise has something over you, and it takes a huge defining moment to turn that around. And if the Blues don't find that defining moment in the next year or two, watch out, because Nashville with Scarf, it's going to be a bloodbath possibly.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but having experience in myself, I joke earlier, but Bridgestone Arena in Nashville is inhospitable to opposing team fans. The Nashville Predators fans themselves, I dealt with when I went there for Thanksgiving last year. They were fine. I mean, and if if I were more up to it, would have been fun to hang out with after the game, because they're right along, the main drag where there's all the bars and the honky tonks there. So it's actually it's a good time if you're a Nashville fan. But the in-game presentation, like from the PA guy to just some of the stuff they do, not foreign road fan friendly. In fact, you cannot actually buy a Nashville Predators ticket unless you live in certain zip codes around the Nashville area. That is how protective they are of, making sure that's as inhospitable to road teams as possible. Now, of course, Tennessee also it's legal to scalp tickets in Tennessee, so you can still get in, but Tennessee's weird. But
it's a genius idea, though. I mean, you look at it as an outside fan, you're pissed off about it, but that's kind of a genius idea. If you have a fan base that will make that possible.
Yeah.
The Blues do, and I think that would be a great thing for the Blues to do, too.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I can see where the Blues might be hesitant to do that, just simply because, like, if the Panthers come into town, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a sellout to the Blues. Oh, yeah. Like, whereas Nashville, I will say this, they took a different approach to building their fan base in Nashville. They just took a very different approach, and they've made it into definitely like a strong connection, more fan connected, I feel, than a lot of teams do. It's kind of hard to explain. It's not, and again, it's not the best place if you're a fan of the road team. It just is not the best place. But the arena's fine, and it's just a hype atmosphere if you're a Preds fan. So I can't dog them too much. I just personally wasn't for me. And then the final team in the Central, Tampa. Your Stanley Cup champion, Tampa Bay Lightning. The Blues have had a 4-2 record against them over the years. The goal differential is 0, so they've scored 12 and they allowed 12 against Tampa. They play Tampa usually pretty well. Now that's another place, by the way. A few years ago I went to a Blues game in Tampa at I think it's called Amalie Arena. Big place. It is it's like United. If you ever been to the United Center,
no,
Wags. United Center is probably about like 23,000 people. It is a big, it feels vast, whereas, Enterprise feels a little bit more intimate in comparison. Amelie's a big place, cavernous, and the fans there were just kind of like, it's kind of like when, we were talking about like when the Panthers come to St. Louis, how fans were just kind of like, it's Florida, Whippy. I think they were kind of the same way when the Blues were in town. It was just kind of like, well, it's the Blues. It's fine. Yeah. But it's not a bad place to watch a game at all. But
I'd love to go down there. I really would. They have a good, fast team, and I like. And the Blues do play them very, very tight. A couple of years ago when they won in overtime, that was a game that they shouldn't have won. I think they beat them twice that year, and in games that they shouldn't have won. And that's just the MO for the Blues.
Well, and also, as inhospitable as Nashville is to road team fans, Tampa, on the other hand, very hospitable to road fans, because I felt like it was probably about 30% Blues fans there, honestly. And it's just when you think about it, though, I went down there. It was February, and so snowbirds, easy to go down there. I mean, flights are cheap to Tampa. I mean, you can fly out of Belleville on Allegiant and get there for like $150 round trip. It's super cheap. So and it's Tampa, so you're gonna have warm weather. And seeing as it's Lightning, it's good hockey as well. So in the end, after all that, the Blues in the past 3 years against the Central Division teams have a record of 37, 22, and 8 overtime losses for 82 points. If that sounds familiar, the Blues had 80 points against the Pacific. The Blues have 82 points against the Central. The same amount of wins, within a few goals in differential against each other. If anything, it leans slightly towards better for the Blues to be in the Pacific because they have a better goal differential. But these are two very even divisions. So there's really, in terms of that, if you were worried about the Blues having to face Vegas and Colorado, well, you already face Colorado all the time anyway. If you were worried about the competitive balance, it's even. Which was shocking to me, Wags.
It was, and it wasn't at the same time for me because, like I said, we've always played Colorado tough. I think the biggest surprise for me was the record against Vegas because I thought Vegas had our number more than than it shows. The fact that we're 5-0-0-4 against them shows that those games are close. They're going to be fun and competitive. But you look at that, and then you just look at the other teams. I knew Arizona was Arizona. Anaheim always seems to play us tough. I think I just look at it in the sense that when we play the Pacific Division teams, those games are always tough, hard fought, and grueling, despite having good records against those teams. And I think that's what worries me more is the fact that this might be a season more of gruelingness or whatever you want to call it.
It's a grind.
Yeah, it's definitely a grind, whereas the Central Division's a little bit more, I wouldn't say wide open, but not as physical in a sense. And yeah, the records are going to be the same, but the wear and tear on the body might not be as bad as it would be playing all these heavier Pacific teams. Although we've talked earlier in the show about how San Jose, LA, and Anaheim are all three on kind of a downswing. So maybe they're not going to be as physical as we have been used to seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point on Vegas, I mean, I think part of the record's a little misleading, I feel, because I feel a lot of those overtime losses against Vegas happened this season. I don't actually have the breakdown in front of me. I feel the Blues did well against Vegas when they started, but I feel Vegas is kind of caught up to St. Louis. Definitely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And of course, a lot can change, between when we're recording this and when this episode is actually published. So this could all be out of date, by the time you listen to this finally. So we will find out. So we got Tom Calhoun Part 2 coming up wherever you get your podcast from this Thursday. Of course, it's audio only. So if you got Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from, it will be there as well. And I think that's going to do it for us, Wags. Any final thoughts?
NHL wise, not so much. Just waiting to see how things filter out.
I feel you got something else on your mind.
Yeah. We're talking about all these announcements that are coming out, and there was actually a pretty big one that did come out of California on, I think it was Thursday when we released part 1 of the Calhoun interview. Disney had their shareholders meeting on last weekend, and they were talking about all the money they make and all that fun stuff that we as the normal people go, millions and billions of dollars, what have you. But they announced a crap ton of not just Star Wars related material, but Marvel and Pixar and all this other stuff that they have, entities that they own. But the Star Wars stuff for me just hit me as like a gut punch because it seemed like everything that I've always wished and dreamed for came out in this announcement. We have tie-ins to The Mandalorian. Well, first off, they announced that the 3rd season of The Mandalorian comes out on December 25th of next year. So Christmas Day next year, season 3 of The Mandalorian hits.
It's a whole year?
A whole year. And with the season wrapping up this coming Friday, it means you're going to have to wait over a year because that'll be the week before Christmas. So a whole year. But 2 tie-ins that they have announced, Rangers of the New Republic, which in my mind looks at a potential vehicle for the Cara Dune character played by Gina Carano and maybe a Bo-Katan reference in there as well. So maybe I wouldn't say a buddy kind of show, but something that shows you a little bit more about the normal people in the army of the New Republic. And they did an Ahsoka series that they're going to be doing, which for me is huge because I was a big fan of the Clone Wars, and Ahsoka Tano was one of the biggest bright spots of that. And spoiler alert, she's going to come back. I'll leave it at that. I won't ruin how or why or when, but
okay,
she'll be back. And the fact that they're doing a show with her is huge because that's going to probably play out the ending of the Star Wars Rebels cartoon series that was out as well, which is highly recommended as well. They announced the fact that Hayden Christensen is coming back to play Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan series. That's incredible.
Good for him. He needs some work.
He does. And I think he gets a lot of bad rap for what what the prequels did for him. And I saw your Facebook tweet or post about it today, and you can explain that.
Yeah, so basically, it popped up on my Facebook today. First of all, I'm a Star Wars fan myself. I may not be as plugged in as Wags is. One time I may have been, but I was reminded of something I did 5 years ago, and that was watching all 6 Star Wars movies before the Force Awakens came out, which I remember the time before Force Awakens came out, and that was like the most exciting time to be a Star Wars fan, probably in my lifetime, maybe even more so than the prequels, because we kind of know how the prequels turned out. But I think time is kind of forgiving the prequels a little bit, but that's another argument. So I watched all 6 of those movies over the course of like one weekend. And one of the points that I made was that, yes, the prequels had some major writing, dialogue, storyline issues. That's very apparent. I think Hayden Christensen did the best he could with what he had, and he got jack shit to work with, as Darth Vader. The story that they told with him and the how he became Vader, I didn't enjoy that, but Christensen tried. I put him strongly in the hey, at least you tried, kind of a category. No, you're not gonna convince me about the inconveniences of sand, very well. I mean, even if Sean Connery had that line to deliver, I mean, I would be like, come on, Sean, really? It's not the actor. Sometimes it's not the actor. Oftentimes it's the writing.
Oh yeah, no question. And you make that reference to the sand line, and I get why they went that direction to an extent, because this is a kid that was born a slave on a desert planet, basically had to live with that his entire life, and sand brings up so many powerfully bad memories. Slavery, leaving his mother, coming back and basically seeing her die in his arms.
Yeah.
I get why they went that direction, but once again, the writing wasn't there. And I'll challenge you on this. And if you haven't watched the series, I challenge you or anybody else to. You need to watch the Clone Wars series, because they do a phenomenal job of reestablishing the character arc for Anakin Skywalker, and it really makes you understand why he fell and became Darth Vader.
And, to that point, congratulations, by the way, to Tim Goodman for winning the jersey giveaway we had last week. And as a thank you for giving him the jersey, Tim has hooked me up with his Disney Plus account. So now I have no excuse to not be catching up on The Mandalorian. And I believe is the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels on there?
Everything is on there. So
okay.
You up with everything that's on there.
I will admit, I'm a type of guy that I like to watch one series at a time, just binge through each. I can only focus on one. And I'm finishing up The Shield right now. I like to rewatch that every few years, and I'm in the final season right now. And I'll admit that I crammed about 4 or 5 episodes today just so I can get that out of the way and start on The Mandalorian, start on the Clone Wars, start on Rebels, because you've got me hyped.
Oh, they're phenomenal. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau combined can now take and do whatever they want with Star Wars.
And I've got to catch up with, in time for all this new Star Wars stuff to come out. I'm really hyped for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And that's because, getting back to the prequels, one shining light throughout those entire prequels was Ewan McGregor and his portrayal of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He, for all the crap in the prequels, and there was a lot of crap, Kenobi was, for one, the actor was great. The story was fine with him. I don't have any real issues with how George Lucas wrote Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels. And Ewan McGregor was an excellent Kenobi. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with his own series and kind of filling that time between, after the Clone Wars and before the rise of Luke Skywalker. That's like, to me, one of the biggest voids in Star Wars lore that I want to see filled is Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. Now, granted, he's on a desert. He's on a desert planet. So, I mean, how fun can Tatooine be? For all those years as he's becoming old and crusty. But we'll find out.
He'll find a way to do it.
He will find a way to do it. Exactly right. And then you got a Lando series coming up. Now they haven't announced if it's Donald Glover coming back.
Yeah. Well, see, I heard a really cool and unique idea as well, to where they may be doing this as a vehicle for not only Donald Glover, but also Billy D. Williams, and basically making it to where it's kind of a flashback, flash forward kind of thing, to where the older Billy D. Williams character is doing this the post Rise of Skywalker thing, where he's trying to help connect First Order stormtroopers back with their family, but also kind of flashing back to the days of his youth and maybe seeing the progression of the character arc of how he went from being this brash kind of gambler, all for himself kind of person, to becoming the Lando of the present, where he's trying to reconnect families in search really of his own lost family, because his daughter was taken from him early in his life as well. So they could do something very, very interesting with that. And then, you were talking about Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor, and I don't know how many people know this or not, but he's actually the nephew of a guy that was in the original trilogy.
Really?
He was the nephew of the gentleman, Dennis, or the guy that played Wedge Antilles in the first three.
I remember. Yeah, I remember someone mentioning that, and that's an interesting little factoid there.
Well, and it's really, really close to me because Dennis Lawson was the guy who played Wedge Antilles.
Yeah,
and Wedge is my favorite prominent character, because the first book I ever picked up of Star Wars was a book in the Rogue Squadron series.
Okay.
Book series about the X-Wing and the most prominent X-Wing group out there, and Wedge Antilles was the guy that led it. And it's a 10-book series that goes through a couple of different iterations, and it really shows a great depiction of squadron life and all that stuff. And the last thing that they announced at this Disney event was that a new movie was coming out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be directed by Patty Jenkins, who did Wonder Woman 1984. She is the daughter of a prominent former fighter pilot herself, and she is going to be doing a Rogue Squadron movie. And I about lost it when I heard that announcement, because that book series and that squadron was the thing that really kind of cemented my Star Wars love.
Yeah.
And I have been, since I first picked up that first book, I have wanted to see a Rogue Squadron movie. So this is like 15, 20 years in the making for me. So when they announced that, I lost it. And it just essentially, all these announcements have kind of made up for the crap year that 2020 is. Not to minimize anything that's gone on, but everything that 2020 threw at us, for me, that announcement about all the Star Wars and Marvel stuff has kind of saved the year in a sense.
So you're kind of like Leia at the end of Rogue One, where she just, looking forward to 2021 and saying hope.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that at all, and I'm excited for Rogue Squadron too, but for like a different reason though. I didn't read the books, but I played the Nintendo 64 game when it came out, and I played that a lot because that game was released actually as a direct response to Shadows of the Empire on N64, and it was in response to the first mission, which puts you on a snowspeeder in Hoth, and that was like the best part of the game. Because the rest of the game was kind of a little disjointed. The controls weren't great on it, but the snow speeder and taking down those AT-ATs were just that was a blast. And Nintendo and Lucasfilms got the hint, and they made the N64 game, which was a really good game. And then I think there was like a couple GameCube games that came out after that. But yeah, all very exciting stuff. And none of it related to hockey because we don't actually have hockey games to talk about at the moment. Hopefully that changes soon. So in the meantime,
the Blues host Star Wars night, so there's a connection.
That's true. That is true. And in fact, I think every minor league hockey team in the AHL and ECHL hosts a Star Wars night. In fact, I think you can actually get a Star Wars jersey from the Fort Wayne Comets in their team store right now. So there you go. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode of Blue Notes. I want to thank you for listening and watching, because without you, there is no me, there is no Wags, there is no Hawaii Blues fan. and there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump, always play to the whistle, may the force be with you, and Jeremy Boyer, play us out. You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.